Hello everyone and welcome to another Versopolis Traineeship video. I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Today I will be talking to you about performance and performing your poetry. My name is Ondřej Hrabal. I am from the Czech Republic. I write poetry, I rap. I used to do poetry slam for quite some time, which is why I think I was asked to host this session. And I also lead creative writing workshops, but also performance workshops quite often. So I'll try to utilize some of the learnings from these workshops and share them with you. Just a small disclaimer. I will be mostly talking about the things that I've learned, about the things from my experience, so I know that they are not necessarily applicable to everyone, and you might disagree with some of the things that I will say, which I think is totally fine. So just so you know, I'm mostly gonna share my experience. I will divide the session into 3 parts, which I think are most important for a good and successful poetry performance. The first one is verbal. It will be about the words themselves. The second one, non-verbal, which will be about the body language and movement. And the third one, paraverbal, which is about how you say what you say. So let's start with the verbal part. I don't want to spend too much time here because this is not a session about writing and it's a separate topic. But of course, if you want to do poetry slam and compete in it, you are very likely to end up writing a bit differently from when you write poetry that's meant to be read. And of course, for a good reason. So when you write a text for a poetry slam competition, you need to focus on clarity, obviously, because the audience usually doesn't have time to think about your verse or go back to it, to line that they need, to focus on a bit more. So it really needs to be clear. At the same time, you might want to learn it by heart, which usually works significantly better on most audiences. And that's why I think slam poets tend to have a very strict meter and rhyme scheme, because it also helps you memorize it and you have like anchors, right? So when you forget, you can just start with the previous rhyme, etc. They are like almost, I would say, these like rules that almost universally resonate with audiences all over the world when it comes to poetry slam. We're still about the verbal part, so it's the text part. Usually it's a focus on storytelling, strong overall message, rather strong punchline in the very beginning, and the strongest punchline at the end of the poem. Because as you know, in slam poetry, people give you points right after your performance. So usually the last emotion is what they remember. So if you really want to be competitive in slam poetry, it's important to end on a very strong note. Then there's the use of rhythm, repetitions, anaphoras, very often excessive wordplay, use of juxtapositions, some surprise elements, very often directly addressing the audience in text. And at least small part, like space for improvisation. So these are some of the things. You would figure it out if you watch successful slam poets that usually work. But above all, and I think this is very important for poetry slam, the text has to be authentic in most cases. And that's what makes it difficult. But unless you are a tremendous actress or an actor, you have to write authentic poetry to be a good slam poet. And in general, I don't really like rules, but if I may create one rule, especially for beginner slam poets, from what I've seen, like in the Czech Republic, but also abroad, I would say be rigorous in writing. So people going into poetry slam often focus on the performance part so much that the texts they perform end up being poor in quality, but they don't have to be. So even though it's supposed to be performed, I suggest be hard on yourself, right? So if you want to rhyme, make sure that you don't just rhyme for the sake of rhyming, but you have high quality rhymes. Study rhyme schemes, try to be hard on yourself. The same applies to other poetic devices. So when you write a metaphor, is it actually a good metaphor, or does it just sound well when you say it well on the stage, but if you read it afterwards silently, it's maybe too obvious, it's just not good enough. It might seem like this goes without saying, but I think it's a dangerous performance trap, that you rely so much on the non-verbal and paraverbal that the content actually sucks. Speaking of non-verbal, we can move to the second part of the session. So let's assume that we have the text. And in most cases, it should be the core, the most important part, something that actually leads the performance. But body language and movement can make a difference, not only in how people react to your poem, if they like it or not, but also how they interpret it. I really think that this is something that can be trained separately. For example, when we lead these workshops, these performance workshops, we often sit two participants next to one another and tell them that one of them has, for example, a character of a dog and the other one of a snake. And then we try to think about how can you express these characters without words, ideally through mimicry. Can you create even more complex characters, just without using words? And this is like a start, and then we try to go into more detail. So how can you express what exactly you mean by a specific word through motion? Because of course, there are words that might be quite difficult to interpret, or lines, but can you use your body to make it clearer how you mean it? And also easier for your audience to, be on the same page with you. This actually starts from the very beginning. From the moment you walk onto the stage, your body language is very important. How are you going to use the space? Are you just going to stand behind the microphone? Are you going to walk around, run around? What I think really matters is that you make this decision beforehand, because then you avoid awkward situations where it's clear that you don't know what to do with your body. And it's just, I think it's obvious to the audience, to attentive audience. I suggest for most people, it's important to be confident, stand there on the stage, make it clear that you are glad to be there and you like your text, you like your poem, and there's a reason why everyone else should listen to it, spend their precious time listening to your poetry and watching your performance. Naturally, there are people who on purpose don't want to seem confident, but it works for very specific people. For a lot of performers, it might seem too gimmicky. So, what's funny? When I used to perform a lot, I know it sounds weird, but sometimes when I walk on the stage, at that moment, I already knew it was going to go well, just because how I, stood there. And I felt like, I really, belong here on the stage. Secondly, this is how you gonna present yourself and stand on the stage. Secondly, think about gestures. So of course, gestures should be natural. Don't overdo it, and ideally meaningful. Especially when you have, especially when it comes to poetry, you can really convey meaning through gestures or support some of the points you are trying to make. Because imagine, in the audience, people usually hear a lot of poems throughout the evening. And it might be exhausting. And you can use your body language to actually draw attention to some words that are specifically important for you, that you really want the audience to listen to remember, or make it easier for them to understand them, to comprehend what you're trying to say. When it comes to facial expression, so I would say the mimicry is the third part, I believe that it's the most important thing is to actually think about what you're saying. You can see it with a lot of poets, experienced performers or poets, when they read their poetry or where they perform their poetry, that they've done it so many times that you can tell from their facial expression that they might be even thinking about something else, or it just seems like they don't take it seriously. So what I've always tried to do was to consciously make myself think about why I wrote it, why I chose these specific words, which then helped me to know on which words to focus, like which words to emphasize, why I wanted, why I decided to perform this. Why do I think that people should hear this? Which also provides you with confidence, like it is important that you're saying that. So what I always tried to do was to emotionally connect with the text again on the stage. And I think that then your facial expressions will do wonders, right? Because from reading your face, the audience then is able to know where you're coming from, and it's a very important additional layer to the experience from hearing a poem. One of my friends and one of the oldest Czech slam poets said that poetry slam is about becoming the text. I like it. I think it's a cool statement. But for me personally, this is what it means. Not just say it, not just perform it, but really, be there in the moment, really think about what you're saying. And I think then it's easy to read your facial expressions. And the last thing about this non-verbal part is that whenever it's possible, because in many clubs you won't see the audience, I suggest to create some connection, like eye contact, interact with the audience, not only through words, but also with like your physical presence. If you're not anxious of doing that, I think it will make you enjoy your performance more as well. And they will also feel like they're a part of a unique moment. That is not just, like professionally trained performer, but there's something going on that is unique. And the last part is about the paraverbal. So we had verbal, about the text, non-verbal, it's about, most importantly, the body language, and then the paraverbal, which is about attributes of your speech, so frequency, loudness, melody. When we are doing workshops for more experienced authors, so they know how to write, and me, I'm trying to help them to improve their performance, what we often do is that we take their text and we tell them to read it totally blandly, without any performance, just to read it. Afterward, we often tell them to just overdo it, to go hardcore on performance, like really this hyped performance. And after we discuss which parts worked best in this, like low-key, just reading it without any performance, and which ones worked best with this hype performance, and then we discuss what the text needs in balance in terms of balancing these two extremes, right? So you never go 100%, but you can draw a line where you should go from not performing to performing a lot. I would say that for most people, especially when we have workshops for beginners or performers who are just trying to get into it, we often tell them that they don't have to perform too much. It's quite often rather annoying, especially when it's not believable and when it doesn't fit the text. So you don't actually believe the author that this is, how they want to express themselves, or you just feel like there's a mismatch between the performance and the text. Because some of the best performers just really calmly read their poetry. They focus on very, I would say, specific nuances in the paraverbal. They are not trying to do too much. And for many poems, this is all they need. So if you write a poem like that, you don't have to force yourself to try to, move your hands and then be loud and scream and whisper. No, there's no reason for that. What I think is very important here, you can think about your poem as a living entity that can itself ask for how it needs to be performed. Don't, try to push your text into places where it's just not natural for it to be there. I also think about the paraverbal, it's important to let yourself breathe. Of course, there are breathing exercises. You can practice breath control as like a discipline, but I really think that, you know, like the conscious usage of spaces and letting yourself like really breathe, then it doesn't feel like you are just trying to be too fast. I think it's really important. Apart from letting the text decide how you read it, I already kind of mentioned it, make sure that you only do what your personality or body or, let's say, acting abilities allow you to do. So if you're not a great actor, it's fine. It doesn't mean you have to be a great actor to be a good poet or a good slam poet or a good performer, but just don't push it too much, you know. Think about your limits and respect them. Of course, you can improve over time and overcome your limits, but you know, when you're planning a specific performance, just take it easy. I think at this point, we can watch 2 short snippets from leading Czech slam poets. Let's start with my friend Dr. Filipič and his poem Seš tam ty, or You Are There. Later on, I will explain why I think both of these performances worked.
Bylo by samozřejmě lepší hrát kanastu nebo válet sudy, než být svou posedlostí nemilosrdně vláčen, ale kudy z existenciální nudy. A tak kručí mi v žaludku, sednu si do bystra, menu si projedu, seš tam ty. Polívka bez chuti, hlavní chod na hovno, dezert, no foj, seš tam ty. Posléze kavárna, na stole cukřenka a v hrnku na kafe, seš tam ty. Chceme si s kámošem partičku šachu dát na místo figurek, seš tam ty. V parku na labičce, seš tam ty. V knize, co pročítám, seš tam ty. Mám chuť na žvejkačku, seš tam ty. Sáhnu si do kapsy, seš tam ty. Seš tam ty, seš
That was Dr. Filipič. Now let's watch a video from Večerka and her poem Nepřístojnost, or Indecency.
Václav Hrabě se otrávil svítiplynem v bytě sdíleném s bývalou manželkou a jejím novým mužem. Koupíme si proto raději varnou desku a s našimi bývalými se budeme zdravit jen přes ulici a tvářit se, že nevíme, jak se tváří při milování a kolik jezev mají na těle a jak se tváří, když se den překlopí do noci a hříchy přestanou být vidět. Já vím, jak se chováš, když tě nikdo nemůže sledovat. Vím, jak se chováš, když podvádíš spánek s milenkami z etanolu. Vím, jak se chováš, když nevedíš svou siluetu na stěně, já tančí makarénu do rytmu swingu, slavní martiny v ruce, zatímco se ti snažím trefit olivou do úst, aby tvůj drink byl kompletní. Já střídmý barman, budu pasákem tvé etanolové milenky, já pragmatická můza, budu taneční partnerkou tvé kocoviny a odměřím ti přesně takovou dávku hříchu, po které se ti bude dobře spát a obstojně vstávat, protože nepřístojně se dá žít pouze v přijatelné míře.
So this was Večerka. Why do I think that both of these poems worked? Or both of these performances worked? So first of all, the poems are good. Philip had a very performative poem, so he made maximum use of both the nonverbal and paraverbal. It's not only the text, but as a person, he is like this. He's a confident actor, he's an entertainer, you know, by default. So that's why everyone in the audience felt what he was saying, and he has these repetitive lines there, and people were even shouting it with him later on. And this is what the atmosphere was, you know, it was very hype. On the other hand, Večerka, she had a more intimate poem. And the poem is quite text heavy, there's a lot of text, and you need to pay close attention to it to understand it well. And that's why overperforming it would be a distraction, and it wouldn't add anything to the poem. It wouldn't serve the poem at all. And honestly, and this is what happens quite a lot, it would have been awkward, I think. So she made a good decision to put maximum attention to the paraverbal, you know, but really, you know, just like work with the melody and the intonation and stress. And that's why the whole club was absolutely silent, listening to every single word she uttered, which I think worked perfectly. You know, it's like totally different reactions from the audience, but both are very, very good and very positive, right? So that's about it. We are now almost at the conclusion, and I think it's clear that I believe that there are 2 potentially obvious yet crucial things to keep in mind when performing poetry. The first rule would be true to the text. So make sure your performance really reflects your content. Let the text navigate how you design your performance. Don't do things just for the sake of being performative. So that's the first one, be true to the text. The second one, be true to yourself. So really focus on authenticity and let this process teach you about yourself. Think hard about who you are, how you wrote your piece, why you want to perform it. And this can help you figure out how to perform it. That's it from me. Thank you for your attention. Thanks for watching the video. I would also like to thank Versopolis for not only this opportunity, but honestly for everything that they are doing for emerging European poets. I wish everyone to enjoy the process of both writing and performing their poetry, and I hope that there is something you can take from this short video for your future performances. Thanks a lot, and have a nice day, everyone.